Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin. This is a cavalcade of hilarity and information brought to you by Palmolive. Palmolive. Yeah. Sean and Dan, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Thank you all for joining, whether you're watching here on two-way platform, YouTube, X. We're not on TikTok because we're afraid of the Chi-Coms, but maybe someday we will when Dan's uncle buys the platform. Grateful to everybody here for being part of this community. We had an incredible show last night. I'm sorry for those of you who missed it, including Sean. Dan was there. Yep. We had Mercedes Schlapp and Steve Elmendorf, and we talked about some of your least favorite topics, some of your favorite topic, January 6th, but also a bunch of other things. And Steve, second night in a row on Two Way Tonight, we had a Democrat strategist who does not like Donald Trump's policies, who explained why they thought he was doing well. And Steve had the 3 A's, which were ready. They were action, attention, and authenticity. And it was a brilliant analysis, which Steve told this reporter he thought of about 30 minutes before the show. It was an incredibly interesting framework. This show is going to be as interesting, though, because Sean and Dan are poised for greatness as we begin this episode. I'll run through the day book, and then we'll talk about stuff, and then you guys will have an opportunity to ask questions. And if you wish to ask questions, please raise your electronic hand. If you've never raised your electronic hand before, Dan, give them some words of encouragement. Get them over their fear, trepidation, reluctance.
Come into the pool. It's welcoming. It's friendly. We will hold your hand and listen to what you have to say.
Excellent. I don't even like to say the J number word because some of you just are triggered by the concept that we would continue to discuss it. It continues to be discussed by government officials and politicians. So we may discuss it today, we might not, but my goal remains to try to be a place, and I think really the only place I know of in America, where we're trying to get those of you on one side and those of you on the other side to listen to each other, try to understand your point of view. I remain convinced, despite the divisive nature of the issue, I remain convinced that the country cannot, I'll put it positive, the country can actually have some more understanding and make this less of a burning, divisive battle. All right, here we go. Donald Trump, 11 a.m., speaks remotely to Davos men and women. I think it's going to be available to watch live. Is that the case? Does anybody know? I tried to find out, but I could not.
I would have a hard time thinking you couldn't in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So 11 o'clock. By the way, Paul, are you watching Fox to see if we need to dip in there? I meant to remember.
I'm watching Fox.
All right. I got to put it up too here on my other monitor.
There's a ride along.
They might have something. Yeah, there's a ride along. They've got some exclusive ride along. I'm not sure we're going to dip into that, but we might.
Fox News Cops combo.
Yeah, just keep watching it. See if it's something we need to dip into. And speaking of Fox, it turns out the Hannity interview was a two-parter. So tonight at 9 o'clock, you'll see more of Donald Trump talking to Sean. And I will say the first part was interesting, but not a ton of news, which is why we're not showing you any clips from it.
Oh, I don't agree with that. I think that there was a lot of stuff to hear him explain.
You guys hear Sean?
Yes. I can perfectly clear.
Oh, are you playing the Fox thing? I'm confused. What's going on here?
I don't hear Fox.
Can anyone hear Sean? Dan, can you hear
I
Sean?
hear Sean clearly.
This was intentional, Mark. You're being so since you can't hear me, I'll just keep talking. I think what was interesting is like Hannity actually asked some really interesting questions where the president riffed off of. He questioned him about your favorite subject, and he asked him specifically about certain people that were pardoned, and it was good to get his thinking. So I think, there's a lot of stuff in there where he expressed his thought process on key issues. So I actually thought the interview was well done. I thought Trump answered a lot of issues that people probably are very concerned about or have questions on. So in any case.
All right, let me say two things, and then I'm going to go through the daybook and we'll come back to this. First of all, I think the interview is interesting. I discount a lot of what is said because the guy will say anything. I didn't hear him say anything that actually meant anything, with all respect. We'll come back to it. The reason I couldn't hear you was because I pressed play on my iPad, and my AirPods, which are the worst creation of Steve Jobs ever, when they don't work. When they work, they're fantastic. My AirPods jumped over to my iPad, so that's why I wasn't hearing you. Too much information. So that's the President's Day, 11 a.m. Davos, 9 p.m. Part 2 of Hannity. J.D. Vance, another day, don't know what he's doing. 1 p.m. Eastern Time, a federal judge in Seattle will hear arguments from 4 states state attorneys general on the issue of the birthright citizenship executive order. Some people think the judge might rule from the bench, which judges sometimes do, and that this may get adjudicated by the Supreme Court quite quickly, even though it doesn't go into effect for, I think, a couple weeks. I'm sort of surprised by that, but as you know, I never predict judges, juries, or justices. Most people think this will be struck down. Smart people realize that even if it's struck down, even if it's struck down by Trump's own nominated justices, it's still something he can talk about and rail against. Congress, House and Senate both in session. Chuck Schumer press conference at 10 to focus on his opposition to the OMB nominee. 11 o'clock, the Senate's supposed to vote to advance the Ratcliffe nomination to head the CIA, with final confirmation expected later today. And still this question of if they're going to be able to negotiate a deal to not have to stay in all weekend in the Senate confirming people. Hakeem Jeffries press conference at 11:15. And then at 3 p.m., the House votes on the Fix Our Forests Act and Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. Other things in Washington, courtesy of the geniuses at C-SPAN. Brooke Rollins, who's the nominee for Agriculture Secretary, confirmation hearing at 10. At 10:15, at the World Economic Forum, two governors who are particular favorites of Sean Spicer, the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, and a gal named Sarah Huckabee Sanders. A long way from Little Rock to Davos, but she's made the trip. And then tonight at 8:30, the governor of Utah gives his State of the State address. Dan, the governor of Utah, as you know,
I do not know.
Spencer Cox is the governor of Utah. All right, confirmations. As I said, there's still this ongoing question of what's going to happen with the people who are currently up. There's still the most endangered remain Gabbard and Kennedy. Their hearings are later on. Hegseth, he does not have 50 votes. He doesn't have 50 people on the record for him. But Fox reported last night that there's some belief that Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell will all be no on Hegseth, okay? Which would mean only one other Republican would have to be no. And NBC News reported this. Put up the graphics, please. NBC wrote a big story about the hearing and about this new information from the ex-sister-in-law, which unlike the Politico story, which ran hours earlier, suggested that this affidavit was in fact potentially influencing some points of view, including someone who previously was very inclined, I know, to vote against Hegseth. Next screen, please. Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who voted for Hegseth in the committee, he's on to Armed Services, now says this. He's undecided about whether he'd vote for him on the floor. So he voted for him in the committee, but he says maybe now he's undecided. And if he votes no, Hegseth is a goner. Sean, what's going on?
I think one, just so people know, there's a difference. Advancing in committee, that happens procedurally from time to time on both sides of the aisle. They'll say, I'm not saying yes, but I'm going to keep the train moving down the track. I think Tillis is trying to, if you go into that whole thing, he's basically saying, I need to find out if the scope of the background check is consistent with past precedent. I don't understand what he's doing here, because you're gonna get a lot of people fired up, a la Joni Ernst, the first movie. And so the reason I say that is, on the one, Tom Tillis is a smart politician. And so the question is he sending a warning shot out to say, hey guys, I'm letting you know that there's some problems, and I'm going to I'm trying to do this delicately, because those aren't the kind of public comments that you make if you're on the team. And I say that because I think he was basically trying to signal.
Totally agree. The other thing in the story that I find, I hope it was misreported, I found it shocking to some extent. Tillis says he's quoted as saying he didn't know that the scope of the FBI background check and report is set not by the FBI, but by the transition, which is true, right? They're the client. They say the FBI, look at this, look at this. Then the FBI sends them the stuff, and then they decide what the committee sees. So Tillis is sort of saying hey, implicitly, I didn't like this, but he said he didn't know that that was the policy. That seems weird for a guy who's not just arrived in the Senate. Dan, is the Hexeth nomination in, as Tom Petty would say, jeopardy or not?
Yes, for the reasons that Sean said. And I wonder if, like, I can't imagine that just four would vote against somebody because you don't want to be the fourth by yourself. So are there maybe 7 or 8 Senate Republicans that are against him so that you can't just fire at one person? It would be a chunk of people. But count me as someone who was surprised that Tillis did that, surprised to now see that McConnell, Murkowski, Collins may be a no. Because you're getting really close to the goal line now.
Sean, in general, just quickly, where do you think Gabbard and Kennedy are? Confirmed, not confirmed? Depends on how they go in the hearing.
I still think Pete's in good shape. The thing about Tulsi is some of the reporting about where some of the Republican senators were on her was not great. And as I said, at this point, you shouldn't be having that happen. And the background reporting was that Trump was telling Tulsi, go out there and fight like everybody else has been doing. And you haven't seen that, right? One of the things that we talked about previously is that Pete really showed that, all right, I'm going to show you. I'm fighting for me. I'm fighting for you. These attacks on me. Tulsi, I don't think I can recall a single interview that she's done. Now, that's how it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to go out and do a bunch of interviews. But I think the president views it like, hey, if you go down and you haven't helped yourself, I'm not going to spend a lot of political capital on you. So,
Dan, and what about Kennedy?
I can't imagine. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Tom.
no, I haven't heard. I've just everything I heard throughout the inaugural festivities was excitement for Kennedy from every aspect of the right.
Yeah.
And even when Mike Pence tried to come out and say comments to him, I was a little shocked at some of the blowback that he got from, in a very personal way. But that just shows you that they're not going to tolerate dissension.
Yeah. Dan, where do you think Gabbard and Kennedy are?
Gabbard, I think is the one that may get sacrificed if of the three of them here for the reasons that Sean just said. There does not seem to be a big defense of her, both by the president and frankly by the right. I mean, the outside groups that we talked about with Hegseth do not seem to be training fire in support of her. I can't fathom that Trump would walk away from RFK politically because when that White House political team thinks about the midterms and thinks about the future, turning your back on RFK and cutting some of those voters loose, I mean, I'd love it as a Democrat, but I just can't see how they would do that at this point.
Right. All right. I think one of the biggest issues, maybe the biggest issue in terms of the legislative agenda, is this balance they have to strike. They need 60 votes for most of what they want to do legislatively in the Senate. Getting 60 votes involves compromise with the Democrats. The minute they compromise with the Democrats, some House Republicans will say rhino, appeasers, and Mike Johnson will have to agree to any bill that has 60 votes in the Senate, or it's not going to pass the House. So that balance, how you sequence that, what the cadence is, and then how you factor in that calculation, debt ceiling increase, budget, but passing a budget, immigration, all these other issues, right? Is really complicated because you can't anticipate what happens if you do a 60-vote deal to the psychology and the attitude of the folks in the House who don't want to do anything with Democrats. The thing that appears to me to be ripe right now is immigration, because you have Mark Kelly and a bunch of Democrats in the Senate saying, we want to do a bipartisan deal on immigration. So Dan, why is Mark Kelly doing that? And how do you think Trump and Thune will react to that offer?
We talked yesterday that if the White House were smart, they would go to the Democrats. Well, the Democrats, if you can't beat them, join them. Some of them went to the White House yesterday, as you said, Mark Kelly and some others, and said, we want to work with you. Look, immigration is the one issue that I think still splits the party. They don't have any good answers on it. And so you have members that see it in their interest. Obviously, Mark Kelly from a border state, Ossoff from Georgia, I think Peters from Michigan, even Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire would love to hug the president a little bit, hug the Republican Party, and be seen as trying to work toward a solution.
But are they doing it because they want to help the country? Are they doing it because they want to save themselves politically? Are they doing it because they want to move the party to the right on immigration? What's the motivation they have?
Look, I think good policy is good politics. And I think the party is frustrated that they have not been able to solve this. There's frustration with the base that does not want to engage in these conversations, any sort of crackdown on illegal immigration. And we've talked about it. Every state now is a border state. Every state has problems, whether it's a crime and safety, drain on public resources. And so I think everyone agrees we need to do something about illegal immigration. And so I think working with Trump, I said this before, who wants to defend illegal immigrants who are criminals in this country? No, very few people would want to be defending the status quo. So I think good policy is good politics on this.
Sean, will Trump and should Trump work with Democrats on immigration with all the risks and possibilities?
So from a Republican standpoint, I mean, a couple of things. Why is Mark Kelly? Because he's at the tip of the spear of immigration in Arizona, right? That's obvious. I think it's also an area where he will be rewarded in his state for working with Trump. I actually had a chance to talk with Kelly the other night, and I think he is a guy that wants to play ball on a bunch of issues. But Republicans, I mean, the way you started this, Mark, is right. Like, there is hey, we're not going to jump to immigration reform until we get border security. But I think Democrats realize if you're going to get immigration reform, it's going to happen now. Republicans know that all the talk that they've had, it's almost like Obamacare and wanting to repeal it. Like, the dog finally caught the car. We have an opportunity to reform immigration, but I think Republicans, especially in the House, are going to want to see border security addressed first, which Trump's actually really doing hardcore right now. And so this is the opportunity to say, all right, well, then let's do it. How Democrats are brought into the fold, though, is going to be interesting. Because it immediately, the second that you say it's bipartisan, you lose 50 Republicans on the House side just because.
And the history of this for both presidents of both parties is when you try to make a bipartisan deal, you churn weeks, sometimes months in negotiation. And in the end, you can't make a deal because one party cries amnesty or the other party, whatever. So is it worth, Sean, the investment of time for the White House to try to figure out if there's a deal with the Democrats, or should they say it's not going to happen in the end, and we've got to just keep the House Republicans happy?
So from a sequencing standpoint, they need to get the contours of a plan together. Here's what immigration looks like, an America First agenda looks like on immigration, and then basically say, if you want to join us, please do, right? Mark Kelly, if you want to be part of this, you can, but they can't look like it's a negotiation. The optics of how it's done matter. And I think that, so if President Trump can say, hey, I want to know what you think, I'd love to have you on board, but this isn't a real negotiation.
The only thing that was Sean and Mark, don't you think of all the issues where it can be a little bit of Nixon goes to China, it's immigration. I mean, I can't imagine the House Freedom Caucus getting into a pissing match with Trump on immigration. It seems like the party is so.
If it looks like that they have caved or not given, you think about what do Democrats want in return, right? So is it some path to citizenship or something like that? Those are non-starters.
Oh, see, I don't think they're going to go to that. I actually think the party is going to hug the crackdown unless it gets too extreme.
Well, I'll tell you, the funny thing is, I personally have a view that I have floated by several people on the right that I've been cautiously optimistic that people. So what I have proposed or bought into is this idea that you basically say, all right, if you are a DACA recipient, you were brought into the country in most cases through no fault of your own. Therefore, you may not have ever been in your country. What if you get blanket, almost like permanent residency, but not citizenship? And we strike the deal now.
Exactly.
And I have run this by some of the most hardline folks in MAGA world on this, and they've said, we'd buy in on that deal. So
I actually, I think the Spicer Act would be a great bill.
That's the issue. The left would go crazy, because they'd say it's insufficient. But that's the deal.
But you're not cutting the deal with 50% of the Democratic caucus. You are cutting
of course,
it with,
a sliver,
with
a sliver.
See, and
I think if you just do the crackdown, you would clear 60 votes. I think you would maybe even clear 65 votes, because one of the things you saw one of the things you
Dan,
saw
let me ask you this. What would be, so let me just lay this out real quick.
Yep.
Hey, you're in this country. You're not going to be forced to leave. You get to stay. You get to stay legally. You get to work. You get to live here, but you can never
apply. No, not that you never can be. You have to apply for it. You have to wait in line and apply for it.
All right. You're changing my plan. You can never be a citizen. That's the deal, but you never have to leave. How many Democrats does that get?
Enough to get cloture. But and also I think you get at least a dozen Democrats in the House too. And Trump can say, at least, I said at least, Trump can say, I'm the first president to pass bipartisan immigration reform in forever. And he'd like that.
As long as you don't give citizenship, Republicans most conservatives will get on board.
You have to let them apply for citizenship. You have to. You can't say you can never be a citizen.
Or you go back and then you apply. But that's the deal. You want to stay, you don't get it.
I'd let them apply from here, and I think I could convince them.
Well, unfortunately, I think I have a pretty...
Yeah, I understand. I think Trump could convince them. You have to do the whole process. What does it matter if you do the whole process from here versus the country where
But you know what I just find so interesting, guys? You guys are saying essentially that the 20 or 30 House Freedom Caucus people will dictate more to Trump what is acceptable than Trump dictating to them. And I just think the latter is the case, but you guys think the former. That's interesting.
Well, no, because he would be dictating to them, because the Spicer plan would require some convincing. Sean and I think they can be convinced, but you have to convince them.
Going to war on Fox against Trump on immigration.
So here's the deal. Republicans know that at some point, if Democrats ever get back control, they'll give full citizenship. They're going to do it. So I think enough Republicans in MAGA world understand, cut the best deal you can.
Why do you say they do it? They had full control and they didn't do it.
Yeah, Democrats can't do it.
It's
just like Carter couldn't go to China. It had to be Nixon.
All right. We'll talk more about this. I want to talk about the new White House press secretary. Sean knows her very well. I know her a little bit. Caroline Leavitt. She's from New Hampshire. She ran for Congress and lost. She won the nomination, but she lost the general election. She's the youngest press secretary. She's a mom, and she hasn't briefed yet, but she was on Newsmax this morning. Let's take a look at Caroline Leavitt.
So Donald Trump made promises during the campaign to make America safer, and it starts with ridding our country of violent criminals who are here illegally. He got right to work. What can we expect next in terms of border enforcement?
Well, President Trump took historic action on his first day in the Oval Office, signing 10 executive orders to secure our homeland, secure our southern border, and launch the largest mass deportation operation in American history. And in just 33 hours of his signing with his pen, the Customs and Border Patrol and ICE got immediately to work to deport violent illegal criminals from our country. They have arrested nearly 500 of these individuals in the interior, and they will be sent home.
Sean, why did Donald Trump want her to be press secretary?
Because I think she understands. I mean, she has a good relationship with him. She communicates the points that he wants made, and she looks good doing it, to be blunt.
Will the briefings be get through them, no harm, no foul, or will her brief be, if you'll pardon the pun, to actually go on offense and get stuff done at the briefing?
Well, number one, I think before we even get to there's a reason you haven't seen one, is that there's a recognition that Donald Trump's his best spokesman, and that he not just, but by the staff and by him, and that he would rather take the opportunity to tell you exactly what he thinks. So I don't think you're going to see as many of them. I think you're going to see a lot of people join the briefing rooms too. That's my guess on where things stand. But I think that she will go out there and you can tell when she talks that she has spoken with him and sort of said, I'm going to talk about immigration. What do you want me to say? And he'll say, right, in classic Trump form, write this down. This is how I want this communicated. So I think it's going to be a recitation, of what she's supposed to do, which is the job of a press secretary, is to speak in lieu of the principal when they're unavailable. So she will, I think, get out there, make the points that he wants to make. I think the part of the question is how combative are the correspondents, and that will set the tone quick too. And part of what soured Trump, I think, in the first term was that he viewed it sort of as it just turned into some
A cluster. A
yeah,
cluster.
cluster.
Dan, will she go down in history as the best Trump press secretary?
Well, no one will be as good as our esteemed colleague here, but I think, to Sean's point, she'll be the shield and arrow when she's asked to be the shield and arrow. And that may not be daily, that may be once a week. But I think when he needs a pit bull, she'll have a smile, look good, and be the pit bull.
She is from the Ari Fleischer, Sean Spicer school of Republican press secretaries, which is if the press behaves appropriately, work with them. But if they're biased and hostile, strike back hard.
But to Dan's point, look, I always joke that every once in a while I looked and I'd think I look like an angry leprechaun. And Caroline, I think, does it much more. She's much more genteel. She's got a very nice smile, and she brushes it away.
Sometimes she can be pretty aggressive in cutting.
Yes, but I'm just saying that she presents well. How's that?
Okay.
I will say this. I think that they're going to put their stamp on some of the briefings. I don't think you're going to see the wholesale changes that myself and I think Ari, even to some extent, would agree need to be made. They understand what battles you pick.
Yeah. Well, so in other realms, Team Trump has made already in 3 days historic change. They're making Reagan, Trump 1, and Bush 43 look like accommodationists to the deep state. It'll be interesting to see if they make moves in this realm and how they relate to the White House press corps that are as fundamental and radical in their approach in terms of change as in these areas they've already done. All right, quickly, we want to get to people. Lots of hands up again. If you've never raised your hand, please join those with their hands up. We'll get to you in a minute. Schumer and Jeffries both having press conferences today. Dan, there's a growing move in the Democratic Party to say, we got to stop talking about what Trump says that's offensive, and we have to start talking about what Trump does that can hurt the real lives of real people.
Yep.
Are Schumer and Jeffries the right people to carry that message?
They are, but they are struggling because for Schumer, he is still trying to figure out the politics of his 2026 members. I said it before, New Hampshire, Michigan, Georgia, even Minnesota, Virginia, New Mexico have Democratic senators up. The question that Schumer's trying to figure out is, when do you cut them free to do what's best for them in their state? And when do you ask them to be good team players and stick together? And I think for Jeffries, he is still trying to feel out AOC. I love her on many reasons. Don't love all her politics, but just she's a great politician. Had a great line. She said there's a difference between being the spokesperson and leading. And I think Jeffries is still trying to figure out, where are we going? Where are we going to pick battles? And to your point, Mark, when Trump is focused on issues that will help people's lives, Democrats are struggling. When it's on the retribution and revenge, there's openings. And I think there is a feeling in the caucus, particularly in the House, it's time to get in the game. It is time to stop trying to figure out where we are and start, picking some fights.
Yeah. Well, I'll be covering both those press conferences on two-way tonight. We'll break them down like John Madden, like a fatter John Madden. Sean, are those two guys, Schumer and Jeffries, are they formidable? Like, is the White House thinking we got to worry about what those two guys do?
So I think Chuck Schumer's always formidable when it comes to the Senate and how it operates. I don't know that on TV he comes across as a guy that I'd be like. He doesn't look like a worthy foe, right? I think Hakeem can look a little more. It's the opposite. He's less feared probably among his caucus, but on TV, I think he comes across as a guy who sounds like he's got that younger like energy that maybe excites people a little more. I just think Chuck Schumer looks like, he's been around as long as Biden.
I'm not sure there's a bigger insult to Chuck Schumer than you're not good on TV.
Yeah,
I know.
I love Brooklyn. I get on the F train and I go get ramen and play hacky sack. I do all sorts of things in Brooklyn. I'd say having two leaders from Brooklyn, I'm not sure is like for America is the absolute best option to have. All right, before we go to your questions, our event coming up on February 2nd. Have I been warning you for days it's going to sell out? I have. If you're thinking, yeah, I'll eventually get around to buying tickets for the event, put up the graphic, please. On February 2nd in Washington, D.C., live event. You can see Dan smile in person. You can take Sean's measure as an angry leprechaun in person. We have 1 ticket left, general admission. 8 tickets left. Yeah, 8 tickets left for VIP. So if you're thinking I'll eventually get around to it, I would grab your other device right now and go to twoway.tv and buy tickets, because based on this announcement, they're about to be sold out. Now, possibility there'll be an overflow room, because Sean and Dan are like Barack Obama and Donald Trump. When they do public events, an overflow room is like a necessity. So that's a possibility, but I can't promise it. So again, let's just sell the thing out right now, because we're going to. So if you want tickets, do it now.
Hey, before we
All
take
right.
questions,
Sean will
Mark,
throw pens.
yeah, exactly. I know we talked a lot about the media yesterday and some of the questions. Real interesting today. A lot of cuts coming. CNN apparently some really
And
serious.
NBC and NBC
And
are both about to
NBC.
cut a lot of
The
jobs.
NBC reports is supposedly less than 50, but this gets back to this overall. It just amazes me that, I played this on my show last night. Every single anchor asked Marco Rubio yesterday. Their first question was on J6. And here's why that sort of, and you probably can go on this more, but like, if you're George Stephanopoulos and you watched Craig Melvin ask the question and you saw that Rubio's not going to take the bait and answer it, then why would you waste 5 minutes of your first opening knowing that he's going to pivot to some other thing? The reason you do that is because you have to do it to appease your audience, right?
Correct.
Stephanopoulos is a really smart question guy. And the same thing happened with Gayle King at CBS. Craig Melvin led the way. They knew that Marco Rubio wasn't going to take the bait, that he was going to pivot, that he was right. They only asked it because they knew they had to appease the base of the people that are part of their audience.
The last embers of the resistance.
But this is part of the reason you're seeing the cuts, is because this is their problem. And again, you see it with Politico. We talked about this before. They bring in a Brit, a self-described newbie, to give us insider information on our political system, and then bring Dasha Burns over to head the Congress. I mean, it was like double down on stupid.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm not going to comment on that, but you're right. Michelle, welcome in. Peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace. If you want to talk about January 6th, Sean's fired up and ready to go. But the floor is yours after you tell us where you are, for those who don't know.
That's my dog. So I had a question about...
No, wait, where are you, Michelle?
I'm sorry, I'm in Texas.
That's okay. Texas. Okay, floor is yours. Thank you for joining. Welcome to Two Way.
I have a question about Stargate. I haven't heard a lot of discussion about it, and I have mixed feelings about AI in general. And for example, when Larry Ellison mentioned that they could use AI technology to detect cancer from a blood test and then use AI to create a vaccine using the mRNA technology, that gave me pause. Kind of reminded me of Elizabeth Holmes meets Anthony Fauci. And not that I'm an anti-vaxxer, but after the pandemic, I feel a bit betrayed by the government, and I wouldn't be quick to get another mRNA vaccine, especially one created within 48 hours. And I'm not sure if Dr. John is on and wanted to join the conversation, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, in general, the Biden administration saw this, the Trump administration knows it. AI has the greatest possibilities on science and efficiency and all sorts of things. And it's also got huge potential dangers. And there's lots of decisions to be made by both the government and the private sector. I worry because government couldn't even regulate Facebook correctly. They couldn't find the balance between public and private there. So the consequences of this are more than just high school friends sharing recipes, right? Consequences here are massive. On this particular issue, I think I worry a little bit if the empowerment of all these people coming in, like Sachs is a very smart guy, but coming in from the outside, not really being in the government, being these special government employees, I worry a little bit about both the profiteering potentially, but also this issue of what's the right balance? Where's government supposed to regulate? Because we all know what we want it to look like, but we also know how dangerous it is. And that's just for the United States. What's China and Russia and North Korea going to do with this? So it's a big problem. I encourage, though, they brought in brilliant people with private sector experience, and this has got to be driven by the private sector. But think about what the Pentagon must secretly be doing with AI. I mean, must be extraordinary. So, Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, Mark, I think you said it well. I mean, I worked with tech companies for 4 years. They're so competitive, and they, as a rule, they don't want government regulation because of the speed at which the technology goes. They want to be the one to leapfrog to the front of the line to make the most money, right? They are capitalists. I think, though, Mark, as you said, and we saw a little bit of this with Musk smacking at Sam Altman, and they're going back and forth, that the risk of all these people from the outside coming in who have financial stakes in the outcome is worrying, because the number of people on the right and the left that have warned about AI's dangers and where this could go wrong. And I think, Michelle, you made a great point. I hadn't even thought about the kind of, now that we've gotten through COVID and all that people are learning and all the questions that still aren't answered, how quick are people going to be to accept what the government says and what's produced? I think it's a great way to think about it. And it's a great point you made. And that's a great dog, by the way. Totally.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, come on. Is that real? Or is that an AI dog, or is that real?
It is.
What's that dog's name?
His name is Albie, short for albatross.
Oh, man. He should have his own show on Two-Way. Sean,
Yes.
talk about Albie,
Westminster
Two-Way,
Dog Show. Fantastic.
whatever you want. AI, whatever you want, Sean.
There's a really robust conversation in the chat that I'm trying to keep up with too. I agree. I think I'm just enjoying the Musk Sam Altman thing in the last 24 hours. It's rather epic. I share serious concerns. I like AI scares the crap out of me, because I look at it like the Terminator. Like it at some point, if it's not done right, who knows where this thing ends up. The government role is to Mark's point concerning, because the government can't do the most basic things right. And then the last thing I do worry about is somebody, on the right, is if it's garbage in, garbage out. And so if you have the people that are writing the algorithms and everything for AI on the left in Silicon Valley, then what we're going to eventually, I actually am concerned about how the algorithms that are being used to create a lot of the stuff that's coming in and out.
Yeah, you saw it in Joe Biden's comments publicly. He didn't usually say it explicitly, but you could read his body language and his tone. He got a lot of briefings saying, "Mr. President, this thing is like a big, complex problem." And I know from Donald Trump's talking to people, Donald Trump's been asking people, even during the campaign, especially in the transition, like, what are we supposed to do about this? Like, what are the steps we need to take right away? So
can I make one other
yes,
comment
sir.
on that? I think Trump at least embraces the technology. He may not, like, as a leader, right? The thing that should scare the crap out of most people on a bipartisan basis is that most members of Congress can't turn their iPhone on. And these are the same people that are going to decide what regulatory measures are appropriate for AI. And so I just, that's part of this, is that how does this thing play out?
Yeah, I agree. Michelle, thank you for coming on. Come back regularly. Always bring that dog.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks. Oh my goodness. All right, John, welcome in. John, I'm calling on you, even though you have no baby and no dog. Nonetheless, you persist.
What do you bring to the table?
Thank you for being here. Tell folks where you are and who don't know, and what's, after you unmute, and what's on your mind.
Oh, you're muted, John.
Unmute, John. You gotta hit that thing that says unmute.
Go.
There you go.
I'm 13.23 miles and about $2 billion away from Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, which direction?
South, Boynton Beach.
South. All right, that's nice. I've been there. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a great place to live. A little cold though this morning.
Have you been to Mar-a-Lago ever?
Around it several times, but never inside.
Never inside. All right.
So
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Back to immigration. I've solved it in 14 points. You ready?
Yep,
Takes about
14,
a minute.
Yeah. Okay, I'll time you.
Okay.
Hold on. 60 seconds on the clock, please.
All right, here we go.
And go.
Go. Deport any illegal aliens who are convicted of a felony. done. Deport illegal aliens who are members of crime gangs in the process. And by the way, there's something called a blue card in here. Just like a green card, I have a blue card. Do not renew any temporary protected status countries and repeal the law. Deport any illegal aliens who arrived after January 2017. Permanently legalize, this is going to Sean, permanently legalize dreamers with a pathway to citizenship, with restrictions such as not having committed a felony. They must provide service to their new country, armed forces, Peace Corps, rural health, etc. All other undocumented aliens must register for a blue card. There's no pathway to citizenship for a blue card holder, ever. Spend money to expedite the backlog of aliens waiting for their green cards application. Do this until there's an average of less than a year backlog. Blue card holders must leave the US and go back to the back of the alien application line and are adjudicated in no more than 2 years. Blue card holders' right to remain in the United States duplicates that of a green card holder. Make a crime for NGOs assisting aliens to enter the US illegally. Abolish birthright citizenship in process. Abolish lottery green cards. Add a guest worker program. And H-1B is for critical needs.
Sean, could that pass?
Not the citizenship thing, and I think that the H-1B has to be dealt with. It's a bigger issue. Like I think there's a short term and a long term with H-1B in terms of what it's used for, how it's used, and what is being done to make sure that American workers fulfill those jobs at some point soon.
Yep.
No.
John, I got to say, Sean, I agree with Sean's two critiques. It's the second one. The first one, I continue to believe you'd have to sell it, and I think you could. But kudos to you, because it's a very thoughtful plan, very global, very comprehensive, and it has a lot of it's got mostly things the Republicans want, but it would have enough in there that you might be able to get Democrats. Dan, what do you think of John's plan? Hold on, let's get Dan's reaction, then back to Dan.
Agree with both of you guys. I think the issue is the devil in the details and the cost of adjudication, the cost of setting up all of these processes to move quickly. That would be very challenging.
Yeah.
So I know DACA adults now. I knew them when they were little kids, and they're as American as Americans can be.
Yep.
And I think there's got to be a way. You have to legalize them somehow, and there has to be some way to get citizenship for them. And
Sean says he can't
can I ask
sell
you
it.
why do you, John, why is that a bridge that you have to, like, why is that critical for you?
Because I know people. And so I know
So,
kids.
but I guess my question to you, let me just ask it this way then. Right now, those people live in the shadows or under, these extending provisions that come and go. Would you rather not, if you were one of those individuals, take a deal that says you actually can now legally work, you can legally stay in the country, I'll give you your blue card, but you just can't vote going forward? Why wouldn't you buy the deal?
I would buy that deal, but these are people that were brought and they had no decision making in the process of coming here. And by the way, I understand DACA kids and adults can work. They can get a work permit, I believe.
Correct. Yes, but that those protections get extended.
Yeah,
I see. You're making them permanent.
Incrementally. So
no, I would agree with you, but I do think that we're Americans and that we have a soft spot in our hearts, and these kids didn't come on their own volition. So why not give them a
so there's two separate issues, right? There's what's the right thing to do for America, and again, they're part of the country and they didn't break the law to come here, right? We're not rewarding them for law breaking. And then there's a question of what's saleable. And Sean, I understand you don't think it's saleable. I think if Donald Trump wanted to sell that and gave examples of people like the people who John knows, I think you could sell that, and I think it's the right thing to do. They didn't.
Well, just to be clear, Mark, I don't doubt you might be able to jam it through. You would lose a lot of Freedom Caucus members, and you might pick up enough Dems that you could get the votes in the House.
And it's in Donald. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's in Donald. That would be a better thing politically for Donald Trump and better for the country for it to be a more bipartisan bill.
But don't take it just by itself. It's got to be an overall solution.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, it has to be. You can't. None of this is going to happen. I mean, the plus and the minus is this: in order for Republicans to buy off, and I'm reading a lot in the chat, and I agree, because of the Reagan amnesty deal, where Republicans still to this day feel like we got screwed on the enforcement piece.
But that was amnesty. But that was for people who came here illegally.
I get it, but our point is we got screwed once. We're not going to do that again. So the point is, I think that this has to be it has to be a holistic thing. Border security, and you named all those things that have to be part of it. I totally agree with that. The problem, but this goes to what Dan was saying, the bigger you make it, it becomes harder to keep everyone together.
Then it has to be bipartisan. Then it has to be bipartisan.
Yeah. And John, you made the point, and this is where I think this gets really challenging. It's one thing to say we're going to get rid of people who have broken the law and are criminals. Most Americans defend that, period. Then there's the other 19.5 million estimated to be here that are your neighbors, that are your kids' soccer teammates, that have good jobs, that pay taxes, that are upstanding members of the community. To pull 19.5 million people out of this country, out of the economy, out of communities would be very challenging. It would, I'll just leave it at that. And so that is where, to your point, and Mark is saying this, how do you bring them out of the shadows into the system, give them protection without then encouraging people who are looking from the other side of the border, saying if we just get there, they're going to do the same thing in 20 years and we'll, you know, the Reagan issue.
You make it really hard for them to become citizens, but you don't foreclose the option.
Right.
John, are you a pro in this issue, or are you just an amateur hobbyist?
I'm an amateur hobbyist.
All right. Well, well done.
Dyed-in-the-heart Republican.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. Great. Very thoughtful.
Nice job,
you know,
John.
I know I live in South Florida, so I know of people that have come here and been here a long time and become millionaires in our country. And they have contributed amazingly. So I really am torn, because you need to do this legally. You need to do it the right way. Let's find a way to clean up the mess together. That's what we need to do.
John, if we get you in to see Donald Trump to pitch the plan, you can't go 90 seconds. You got to just do your minute.
I'll be glad to cut it down if I can.
Right.
But you're welcome.
Thank you for joining. Really grateful to you. Really interesting. Thank you. All right. Kenneth, again, had the good sense to bring a youngin. Kenneth, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind.
It's a cheat code that I have. I'm in Indiana.
All right. And who's that with you there?
What's that? This is
Who's
Chloe.
that with you? Hi, Chloe.
Say hi, Chloe.
Hello,
Say
Chloe.
hi.
That's a smile. I see a little one.
Yeah, that's all right. Chloe, I like your outfit, Chloe. Thank you for being here.
She's lost in the Miss Rachel sauce right now.
Yeah.
Kenneth,
floor is yours. Yes,
I have two questions. The first, well, both are probably for Sean. With Rubio and I just saw a report coming out last night or this morning that Iran is increasing their rate of uranium enrichment. What percentage chance do you give the idea of joint airstrikes with Israel or without Israel on Iranian nuclear facilities? Because Trump was pretty hawkish about that right before the election, and we all know Marco Rubio. So
when it comes to airstrikes, the president wants strong assurances that civilian casualties are going to be limited and that the strike will be focused on installations and infrastructure. So I think he would have to see a plan that was very surgical, but I wouldn't rule it out by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, surely it's already been discussed, no?
Oh, the Biden administration was discussing it with the Trump administration at the end, and Israel, obviously. But
Second
man,
question,
once
sir.
you swing for the king, you better not miss.
And also the fact that it's I think pretty well established that the Iranian government had a hit on his head. I mean, does that not motivate him more to?
Well, but I mean, the issue is if it's one thing if we green light Israel and we provide some munitions, let's say bunker busters, things of that nature, and they go in, Iran probably responds at Israel in some capacity. We go in with them. Let's say there has to be some follow-up to this. This is a guy who's talked about ending forever wars, getting out of the Middle East, not getting sucked into this stuff. You're on a honeymoon right now. Like, everything is positive for him. You go start potentially World War III in the middle. You just don't know how this plays out, but they may do it anyway. I think Israel is chomping at the bit.
I always thought
Kenneth. Yeah, go ahead, Kenneth.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always thought being his second term, he has less to lose politically. The next question is, are we going to free the Tiger King? Because I think we're well past due. And I don't know, is that even a discussion in the administration?
I think that he needs, there needs to be a sequel or something that gets Don Jr. and folks fired up again, because I don't know that he's got the attention that he had the first go round. I
messaged his Twitter account and said that if you talk to the, Trump, Musk, those big guys, and if you gave, whatever platform exclusive streaming rights for whatever show comes next, then that would maybe be, Yeah,
I don't know. I think he missed his window.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hey, Kenneth, can you pivot the camera a little bit so we can see what's going on? Yeah, there you go. That's good stuff.
We got this guy over here.
Oh, man. And what's his name?
Hayden.
Hayden.
Yeah, hello.
His nickname is Big Guy because he was born at 10 pounds, 7 ounces.
Whoa. Yes, I agree. I never look at the chat, but Ronnie, you're right. That doll hair is outstanding. Kids, have a great day.
Bye.
Have a great day. And thanks, Kenneth. Thanks for joining.
Yeah,
bye,
thanks.
kids. See ya. All right. Got a dog.
Bye, big
We
guy.
got some kids. Bye. All right. Click the wrong button. Dog, kids, and now a little novel. We got a couple. They're two-way stalwarts, Sandy and Dave. Welcome back. Tell folks who don't know after you unmute where you are. What's on your mind?
Hello, I'm Dave, and I live just outside Philadelphia in New Jersey. And we were trying to see if a cat would work.
Cat works too.
Or a dog.
All right, we got dog, kids, cat. Good. What's that cat's name?
Emmy.
Emmy. Awesome. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks what's on your mind, please.
Okay, well, I'm pretty much a lifelong Democrat, and I've noticed it doesn't seem like you have very many Democrats.
We have a lot of Democrats. They just don't raise their hands as much for reasons we don't understand. We're trying to cure, but we know a lot of people on here. There are plenty of Democrats, and we're glad you raised your hand, and we hope your fellow Democrats will follow your example in greater numbers.
Okay, good. Well, I just have like a comment and then maybe a question.
Yes, sir.
I think the other day we were talking about the future of like what are the Democrats going to do, and I think, and I agree, we need to come up with a couple issues and then be consistent about them. And I think along with that, and this is something that's bothered me for like years now, is that the Democrats seem to let the Republicans define the democratic values and what the Democrats are trying to do. One of the latest examples is the defund the police issue, where after years we finally begin to get a national conversation about like why are Black people and people of color constantly getting killed by the police, and they look at the issue where it's like, well, what can we do to help the police? And I think the defunding thing came up because it was thought that, well, it's a tough job being a police officer. You're going into these issues where you're talking with crazy people half the time. And it might help if, say, we send a social worker along with them. And how do we pay for it? Well, instead of buying another tank for a police department, why not use some of that money to help the police? And that was sort of twisted to the point where, oh, the Democrats want to abolish the police, and a whole bunch of fear mongering that we Republicans are going to keep you safe. We're not going to abolish the police. And then the Democrats, just instead of pushing back as much as they could, it just sort of like they let the issue drop.
Yeah, Dave,
And
let me stop you there. I want to get Dan and Sean to react to what you said. Dan.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Dan.
Well, first off, thanks for coming on. Thanks for raising your hand. Would love more Democrats to speak up, and it's a great question.
I'm an independent.
I'm sorry.
Sandy's an
We have a
independent.
mixed family here.
Okay. You're a classic American family then. That issue, so you're right in that it would be great to give police additional support with things such as social workers. I think that where the party went a little off and the reason it kind of ran away from the issue so much is taking money away from the police when in many cases the police are underfunded to begin with. And they tied it with district attorneys not focusing on what they defined as small crime, because the argument was not one argument or one issue was young people being killed, right, when it probably was not necessary. The other was the number of people who were put in prison. They called it a generation of young, primarily Black men and Latino men in prison. The problem was when you stop enforcing small crime, it tends to lead to an increase of such crime, and people push the limits. It's human nature. What can I get away with? You're in Philadelphia. I have a lot of in-laws down there, and I live in New York City. It got out of control, right? You started having people breaking into cars, people going into pharmacies, stores, and grab and go, right? Smash, grab, and go. And it pushed to bigger and bigger crime. And cities, people who live in cities started saying, wait a sec, time out. This is not working. We are returning to the 1980s where you don't feel safe in many parts of the city. And so to your point, we didn't just lose control. I think there is agreement. It was defund the police was a bad idea. The name was terrible. To your point, it was not what they were fully talking about. How to make cities and any community safer is a good thing to focus on. If we have ideas going forward, we should. In my opinion, we should support the police in every way we can. 99% of them are outstanding people. Like any profession, some have issues, they should be dealt with, but we should fully support a very hard job policing our communities to keep us safe.
Sean.
Just my 2 cents.
Dave, I know you live in New Jersey. Are you an Eagles fan?
Well, I originally grew up in Pittsburgh, so I'm more of a Steelers fan, but
Okay.
I've grown to love the Eagles.
More importantly, can you spell Eagles?
Oh, come on now.
He's not a good speller.
No, I think it's E-A-G-L-E-S, or is it Eagles?
Yeah, the mayor of Philadelphia spells Eagles E-L-G-S-E-S. As a guy who has misspelled several things, I feel for her a little. So look, I will just say that Dan covered a lot of the points. I'll just tell you the politics, which is if you're explaining, you're losing in politics. And I think there's sometimes a discussion worth having over a policy issue. But the way that you have to, if you're explaining the issue and you're immediately on defense, you're usually in trouble. And I think that's where they got themselves backwards on this issue. And they paid a toll politically. So,
all right, Sandy and Dave, we're at time. So can you guys come back and ask your other topic on a different occasion, if that's okay? And thank you for joining. Very grateful to you. And again, see Democrats. Dave, just briefly, how was the experience? Was it painful, scary?
A little scary, but not painful.
Scary, but you survived.
I did it. Yeah.
You survived. All right. Thank you both for joining. Have a great day. So as I said, I think that, and Sean, I think is right, the Davos thing will be available. So we'll break that down on two-way tonight at 6 o'clock tonight, as well as the Schumer and Jeffries press conferences to see how they're talking about stuff. And then maybe we'll have an additional Hannity clip that we can show you. Sean, you have 30 seconds for closing remarks. Just kidding. But you can say something if you'd like. How about
I take back my time, reclaim my time, and
yeah. Okay, Dan, closing remarks
from New York.
I really want to see what Jeffries and Schumer have to say. And look, for Democrats, the game's about to come to us. Trump's honeymoon is what he can control right now. He's about to come into Congress, and that is where, you know, we will enter the playing field. Hat tip to Steve Elmendorf for reminding all of us of that.
Yeah. Again, grateful to all of you for being part of this community. I had a nice, lovely civil conversation. J6 barely came up. Crushingly disappointing to some of you, delightful to others. But that's the way it goes here on Two Way. I'm grateful to you, as I said, for being here. I'll see you at 6 o'clock. And the three of us, inexplicably, the longest week in American history ends tomorrow. The final episode of Inauguration Week of the morning meeting, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I promise a basket full of surprises. Have a good day.